The interrogation rooms of occupied Europe shared one chilling feature. They were designed not just to extract information, but to systematically dismantle the human spirit. Between 1933 and 1945, thousands of women discovered this firsthand when they encountered the Gestapo's calculated machinery of suffering. Irina Sendler heard boots echoing down the corridor of Pawiak prison in October 1943. She had been arrested days earlier for helping Jews escape Warsaw. The injuries she received in the following weeks would never fully heal. She was one of thousands: resistance fighters, political prisoners, women who hid the persecuted. All of them faced interrogators who had perfected cruelty into a science. The sessions followed a predictable escalation. At Klapperfeld police prison in Frankfurt, officers like Bauer and Rulleman began with insults and threats, then came slaps. The violence intensified methodically. Forceful blows, painful restraints, hair torn from scalps in fistfuls. This wasn't random brutality, it was deliberate progression, each stage designed to break down resistance layer by layer. In Lyon, 13-year-old Simone Lagrange watched Klaus Barbie enter the room holding a cat. For a brief moment, she felt relief. Surely someone who showed affection to animals couldn't be cruel. Within seconds, he wrapped her hair around his fist and struck her repeatedly. He returned for 7 consecutive days, always wearing what she later described as a smile thin as a knife blade. He wanted the location of her younger siblings. She never told him. The psychological manipulation ran deeper than the physical violence. Interrogators alternated between false kindness and savage brutality, keeping prisoners off balance, never knowing which version would walk through the door. This calculated unpredictability destroyed the mind's ability to prepare, to brace for what came next. But some techniques required no physical contact at all. The bathtub became one of the most feared objects in Gestapo facilities. The French called it la baignoire. Lisa Lesèvre, a resistance member, endured this particular horror for 9 days straight in 1944. She was forced to strip and climb into ice-cold water. Her legs were tied to a metal bar stretched across the tub. Barbie would yank a chain attached to the bar, plunging her head beneath the surface and holding it there until her lungs screamed for air. Each time she surfaced, gasping and choking, the cycle began again. Lesèvre later testified about something most people wouldn't expect. She tried to drink the water, to drown herself quickly and end the suffering. Her body's survival instincts prevented it. She couldn't override the reflexive fight for air, even when death seemed preferable to another second of that torture. In Norway, Henriette Beer Lorentzen faced similar treatment while 4 months pregnant. A German doctor confirmed her condition before interrogators placed a pillow under her belly and proceeded anyway. She survived, only to be transferred to Ravensbrück concentration camp, where she delivered her child before being separated from the infant forever. The cold water method served multiple purposes for the Gestapo. It left no permanent visible marks. It induced hypothermia and shock. Most importantly, it created an overwhelming sense of helplessness. Victims experienced drowning repeatedly without the release of death. Their bodies betrayed them with each involuntary gasp for air, forcing them to participate in their own suffering. Yet this was only one technique in an extensive arsenal. What made the Gestapo's approach truly devastating wasn't any single method, but how they combined them into a comprehensive system designed to destroy every aspect of human resistance, physical and mental. Sleep deprivation required nothing but time and cruelty. The Gestapo called it enhanced interrogation, a clinical term for keeping prisoners awake until their minds collapsed. Continuous questioning, blinding lights, deliberate discomfort. Women held in solitary confinement faced sessions stretching across days without a moment's rest. Exhaustion doesn't just make you tired. After 48 hours without sleep, hallucinations begin. Shadows move on walls. Voices emerge from silence. The mind, desperate for rest, starts creating its own reality. By the 3rd day, prisoners couldn't distinguish memory from imagination. Their resolve didn't break suddenly. It eroded grain by grain until nothing remained. Isolation magnified every effect. Cells measured just a few square meters. No human contact except interrogators. No sound except footsteps in corridors and screams from other rooms. At facilities across occupied territories, this combination created something worse than pain. It created doubt. Prisoners began questioning their own memories, their own strength, their own sanity. Guards understood the power of anticipation. They would parade tortured victims past cell doors, ensuring every prisoner saw what awaited them. The silence between sessions became its own form of torture. Women sat in their cells, listening, waiting, never knowing when the door would open again. That constant terror proved as destructive as any beating. But the standing cell might have been the most insidious method of all. No violence, no equipment, just a small chamber where sitting or lying down was impossible. Women stood for hours that became days, their hands sometimes bound above their heads, in stress positions that prevented any relief. The body has limits it can't overcome. After the first few hours, legs begin to swell, muscles cramp, circulation fails. At facilities in Poland and Germany, prisoners were forced onto tiptoe, their hands hoisted so high they couldn't lower themselves. Guards called this position the pillar. Women described fire coursing through every limb, muscles screaming for relief that never arrived. Those who collapsed faced immediate punishment, then the process started again. The psychological damage matched the physical. Every moment required active effort to remain standing. Any weakness, any loss of balance would bring more suffering. This method exploited a simple truth. The body will eventually fail, no matter how strong the will. Electrical torture offered interrogators another advantage. Hand-cranked telephone magnetos produced shocks that left minimal visible evidence. Electrodes applied to sensitive areas created pain victims described as fire moving through their bodies. But unlike beatings, this could be repeated endlessly without obvious trauma. The current caused violent muscle spasms and burns at contact points, yet these injuries healed or could be hidden. After 1940, this became increasingly common at interrogation centres throughout France and occupied territories. The Gestapo had discovered what would later be called clean torture, methods that destroyed prisoners without leaving evidence that would testify against their perpetrators. Lise Lezev suffered electrical torture so severe she lost her sight. She testified that the men who interrogated her were savages who caused facial injuries and permanent damage. But she survived to speak. Many didn't. The combination of techniques, water and electricity, and sleeplessness and isolation created a system designed to annihilate resistance completely. In 1987, Klaus Barbie stood trial in Leyen at 73 years old. The women he'd tortured decades earlier returned to face him. Simone Lagrange, who'd been 13 when he struck her daily for a week. Lisa Lesev, who'd nearly drowned in ice water for 9 days straight. Irina Sendler, whose injuries never fully healed. Their testimonies revealed systematic terror across an entire continent. These weren't random acts of cruelty. They were calculated methods refined through practice, designed to extract information while destroying the human spirit. The women who survived carried those scars forever, physical and psychological, but they also carried something their torturers never anticipated: the strength to remember, to testify, to ensure the world would know exactly what happened in those rooms. The last survivors of these interrogation rooms are passing from living memory. Within a generation, no one will remain who sat in those cells, who felt the cold water close over their head, who stood for days until their legs gave out. But their testimonies endure, not as abstract history, but as direct accounts of what humans can inflict upon each other when systems are designed around suffering. What happened in Gestapo facilities across occupied Europe represented something beyond individual sadism. It was industrialized cruelty, methods tested and refined, techniques that left minimal evidence while inflicting maximum damage. The interrogators didn't act from passion or rage. They followed procedures, rotated shifts, documented results. That calculated nature makes it more disturbing, not less. These women, and resistance fighters and political prisoners and those who simply helped the persecuted, faced that machinery, and many refused to break. Some gave nothing. Others held out long enough for their networks to scatter, for the people they protected to escape. Their strength under conditions designed specifically to destroy strength stands as testimony to something interrogators never understood. The human capacity to endure exceeds even the most sophisticated systems built to crush it. Now you know what they faced and what they survived.